Welcome back to the channel, fellow aviators. I am excited to be back with you. I apologize for the lack of content last weekend. I was actually away at training doing my annual check ride. It actually turned out to be a lot of fun. I'm sure I will talk about that throughout the flight. It really was kind of a good time, which is kind of unusual for a check ride for me. I'm not sure about content for next week. I'm really going to try to work on it. I have to go. My shift starts a little bit early, and that is because next weekend, my wife and I are going to be away. I don't really talk about it a lot, and I probably should maybe a little bit more, but my wife and I have a 501c3 nonprofit charitable foundation. And what's the 501c3 part? That just means it is actually, we've hired some lawyers, we have accountants, and we are a fully tax deductible charity, just like the Red Cross. So if you would like to donate to an organization that provides medical missions, and particularly women who are suffering from breast cancer, I'll leave a link in the description below. Unlike, I'm not trying to start a war with the Red Cross, but unlike some of those larger charitable organizations where you hear stories like maybe only 10 or 11 cents actually goes to the actual recipients, we have like 99 cents out of every dollar goes to all of our recipients. The only little overhead we have is the website that we run, and then a storage facility for all our medical supplies. And as I said, we actually specialize in women who have had breast cancer, mastectomies. The usual result of that is some lymphedema, and so we provide lymphedema supplies. We provide breast prosthesis, say that 3 times as fast, bras, all that kind of stuff. And we usually, when we go on our medical missions, we bring any excessive anywhere from $30,000 to $70,000 worth of supplies with us, and it is all supported either self-funded or from all of our fundraiser events that we do. So I'll leave a link in the description below. That is where I'm going to be off to next week, and we're actually heading to the Dominican Republic for a fairly, I think we're doing around 100 women. That probably totally came out wrong. But we have about, I think 100 patients that we're going to see over the course of 2 days. So looking forward to that. Actually, it'd be the first time I've actually gone, talking about how we really try to watch our overhead. We go all the time. I don't want to spend a lot of our resources on just a plane ticket for me, since I'm kind of like the most useless person there. So, but I'm going to go this time, paying my own ticket. And so all of everything that we raise is goes to all of it for patient care. So anyways, I'll leave a link in the description below to the website for our foundation, and I appreciate any of your support. All right, so we last left off by doing probably one of the world's most unstablest approaches into Bozeman here, Montana. And I picked up a flight pretty quick, heading up to, I think, Glacier Park up in Montana, someplace. This is an early morning flight. You just saw my light turn off here. We are probably going to need to start working on some of our cold weather stuff, but right now we are still good. So we don't need to bring in the engine heaters, which would actually kind of be a thing. You can check here. We bring up our tablet right here. You can see it's like 59 degrees. If you don't want to use the tablet, you can. Let's see, go over here, look up, and you can see right there, 59 degrees. That's our outside temperature right there. So we will not need to use any of the preheating, but I'm sure as we move forward here in real time, we're getting into the end of November. Just had Thanksgiving Day weekend, so I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. But as we probably move forward here in the next couple of weeks, we'll have to start working on some cold weather ops. So if you remember from the last episode, we were flying over some fairly mountainous terrain, and I just touched on it real briefly, and I'm just going to show it one more time here real quickly on how to plan. Let's go ahead and bring up our low-level IFR route charts here, and you can see we're down here towards the bottom here towards Jasper. That's Bozeman, Montana. We're heading up to, like I said, I think that is Glacier Park. And as we zoom in here, you can see as we take off here that 11-9, 11-7, just looking along the pink or magenta dotted line, that is our course. 11-7, 12.0, as we get into, as we look at each individual grid, 9.9 here as we get into actual Glacier Park. So we are going to need to be right on course here, 11.7, 12.0. I'm going to want to be at least 13,000 feet. We are heading westbound, so we actually need to be at a odd level. So we'll go ahead and choose 14,000 feet. Just something to keep in mind as we're doing some of our kind of pre-flight planning a little bit. Since we're going to try to use say intentions, we're going to try to shoot the ILS runway 02 into Glacier Park. So what I'm going to want to do is be up around 14,000 feet. If they don't assign it, which I think is very possible, because I'm not sure how intelligent that part of the equation is, I'm just going to want to make sure I've asked for a climb up to 14,000. If for whatever bizarre reason they don't give it to me, I'm going to climb up there anyways, because I don't want to have a controlled flight into terrain. And then as you see, as we get kind of over the lake here and going into Gogs, which here is our initial approach fix. If we pull up, we can actually pull up our approach. Here is Gogs. You can see Gogs here is at 9,000. We have another peak there. Looks like 6290 just to the north of Gogs, coming up over the lake. So we should be able to descend probably around 9,000 as we're getting close to the lake there. And then as we look at the highest obstacle in this quadrant around us, it's going to be 7,437 feet. So I think the plan, as we exit out of here, is I'm going to try to hold around 14,000 just till we're kind of getting over a beam Simmery here, or as we're getting over the lake, and then I'm only going to be at 14 going to 9. It's only, even I was in the Marine, so if I use all my crayons, 5,000 feet, so roughly 15 miles out, times 3 is where I'm going to want to start ascent. It's a little bit easier here when we're in a piston as opposed to an airline. So anyways, that's kind of the plan for what we're going to do today. We've gone through the startup here a couple times, so I think what I'm going to do is off camera, I'll go ahead and get the aircraft started up, and I'll just bring you guys in when we're getting ready to pick up the clearance. And as we see, kind of a nasty day here. I'm just using live weather. So this is really what it is up in Bozeman here around, was it 7:40 in the morning, something like that. So, all right. So I will check back with you. Words are hard again, even though I've had my coffee. Words are hard. I'll check back in with you in just a few seconds, and we will just kind of proceed on and hopefully plan for the ILS, and then we'll have a little discussion. I'll tell you what the check ride was like and what we covered, because it's the same and different every single time. So anyways, that's the plan, and I will see you all in just a second. All right, everybody, I am back. We've got the engines all up and running, just waiting to pick up our ATIS. But before we get going, I just wanted to show something really quickly. I think I covered it in the last video or the very first one, but if you have low oxygen, and I did when I first came out to the aircraft, remember this aircraft, unless you change it, will have the save state to it. And so we burned up a lot of oxygen coming out here. Remember, just go to your weather radar and then lower left, just click the hold button, and that will refill your oxygen up over time. But we are completely full now. So let's actually just pick up our ATIS, which I have pre-programmed in there, and then we will pick up our clearance.
Visibility 10. Sky conditions, solid overcast at 6,000 feet. Temperature -1. Dew point -2. Altimeter 2991. Density altitude 3600 feet. Radar coverage is currently reduced, impacting final approach operations. Advise on initial contact. You have information Oscar. Bozeman Yellowstone, information Oscar. 1356 Zulu. Arriving and departing runways 12, 11 right, 3. Wind 270 at 4. Visibility 10. Sky conditions, solid overcast at 6,000 feet. Temperature -1. Dew point -2. Altimeter 2991. Density altitude 3600 feet. Radar coverage is currently reduced, impacting final approach operations. Advise on initial contact. You have information Oscar. Bozeman
And Bozeman clearance. Baron 058 Delta Delta, ready for IFR clearance up to Glacier Park. Information Oscar.
I am working on that clearance. Stand by.
I'll make sure to put our weather radar back to on while we're waiting.
Baron 8 Delta Delta, cleared to Glacier Park. Radar vectors GOGS, then is filed. Climb and maintain 7,000. Expect 8,010 minutes after departure. Departure on 118.975 squawk 3146. And we had to change your departure runway to 11 right.
All right, Baron 058 Delta Delta, we are cleared to Glacier Park via radar vectors to GOGS. Climb and maintain 7,000. Expect 8,000. Departure frequency 118.75. Squawking 3146 and planning on runway 11 right.
Baron 8 Delta Delta, read back correct. Ground is on 121.8, safe flight, sir.
121.8 for 8 Delta Delta. All right, so we are going to go over to 11 right, which is a little bit of a brand new. Let's go back to Navigraph. We'll come over here, look for the 10-9 chart, and where is 11? 11 right. All right, so I assume they mean this one right here, so I would expect Alpha 4 cleared across, Charlie 3, something like that. All right, let's see what they tell us. And ground 8 Delta Delta, ready to taxi. Information Oscar.
Baron 8 Delta Delta, you're on the clearance frequency. Contact ground on 121.8 for taxi instructions.
Oh, look at that, I was. 8 Delta Delta. Ground 058 Delta Delta, ready taxi. Information Oscar.
Baron 8 Delta Delta, runway 11 right, taxi at your discretion.
11 right at my discretion, 8 Delta Delta. So I have never seen this before. So we're going to find out what they want here. I've got 11 Golf. I got just 11, and I've got 12. Let me see if I can ask. See what happens if I ask for 12. And ground 8 Delta Delta, request taxi to runway 12. I guess it's going to ignore me. Well, we're going to taxi to runway 12 because if we look at 11 Golf, first of all, I don't see a 11 right here on my 10-night charts here in Bozeman. I do have 11 Golf, which I assume G stands for grass field, because if you look at it, it says turf, and it's only 2,800 feet of runway. And there's about zero chance I think I'd want to take off on a grass field in a pouring down storm as we're coming up into winter. That just seems like a mud fest. We were not told for 11, and
ground,
I don't see right. So I'm actually going to taxi to runway 12, and if that messes up, say, intentions, so be it.
Glacier Park.
All right, so let's just go ahead and... So we just had need to tackle straight ahead, make a left-hand turn, and then that is our plan.
To, Glacier Vector...
In the meantime, we can set our...
Climb, maintain 8,000, expect
we want to put 7,000 in there. We want to put it in our squawk of 3146. We want altitude reporting.
Legion 4003 requesting IFR back to Los Angeles with info Delta.
Enter. So 3146, we got 7,000 feet. We're going to get radar vectors, so we'll just put our runway heading on as we get out to the runway. And from here, let's see what happens. We should have a tower frequency, so we can prep ourselves here for 118.20. Enter. So that's set up. All right, let us get going. And I'll just probably meet you down towards the end of the runway here. I can't think of anything else we really need to do. But as you did see, they've assigned us 8,000 feet, and there's zero chance I'm going to accept 8,000 feet in IFR conditions.
Tango 3 Alpha Alpha 5.
The only thing I haven't done is put on my taxiway lights, and you'll see here in rain, it actually makes it a little bit worse, and that's actually kind of reality. As you get into rain, it just highlights all the raindrops. It's sometimes very hard to see. So again, I will turn that off for now. One of the things you often do is when you get into a cloud, you're going to turn off all your lights anyways. So I'm going to just taxi down to the end of 1-2 here. We'll see what happens if ATC gives us more shenanigans with either the altitude, holding 8,000 as opposed to 14, which is what I want, or if it gives us a hard time here with runway 12. I'm just going to turn off say intentions. I feel kind of bad that I'm not really giving say intentions, showing say intentions in a good light. For the most part, I think it works pretty well. And I think it worked pretty well last time, other than the fact that it did not give us a proper routing onto the RNAV, which I think I'd like to do again for you guys, but do it properly and planned out. So, all right, I'll meet you at the just as we're getting ready to take off after I've done up the run-up check. All right, see y'all in just a sec. All right, let's see how they deal with me being at runway 12 instead of the mythical 11 right. Bozeman Tower, Baron 058 Delta Delta, ready to take off.
Baron 8 Delta Delta, runway 11 right, winds 270 at 4. Fly runway heading cleared for takeoff.
Fly runway heading clear for takeoff. 058 Delta Delta. All right, so I wonder if they haven't gotten the update. You know, 11 right and 12 are pretty close, so I don't know. Looks like it's going to work for us. So we got 7,000 set. We've got 118.75 is in our standby radio, which is going to be our departure frequency. And now let's just go ahead and line up, make sure we are clear there. All right, let's get going. Right around 85 knots or so. Positive rate.
Nice takeoff, pilot.
1523, contact departure.
Right into it. So let's put our runway heading on. Let's go ahead and put our autopilot on. And we're gonna go ahead and arm that. And we can come over to here. Let's go with the 1,000 feet per minute rate. Let's go with 1,000 feet per minute rate of climb. I think I can get there eventually. Let's check our temperature. Yeah, we're still in the 60s here, so we'll leave it as is.
Baron 8 Delta Delta, contact departure on 118.975.
118.975 for 8 Delta Delta. Good morning. Baron 058 Delta Delta checking in with you, 6,000 climbing to 7,000.
058 Delta Delta, Big Sky approach, radar contact. Climb and maintain 7,000, turn left, heading 305, vectors to Gogs, then is filed.
Vectors Agog and 8 Delta Delta, we request a climb up to 14,000.
Baron 8 Delta Delta, climb and maintain 14,000, vectors to Gogs, then is filed.
14,000 vectors to Gogs, then as filed for 8 Delta Delta. All right, so we got our climb. And we could probably, if we wanted to, we could increase our rate of climb a little bit, try to kind of get more towards max rate of climb here. Let's go with like 1,500, got plenty of power. And they said heading 305, so let's dial in 300 and come down here, and we can choose heading. Let the turn start before we do anything.
I'll have your clearance in just a second.
Should we get into the turn? And 305. All right, so we're underway here, come around 120 knots. We're just going to want to watch that. I did take off, just so you guys know. If you look down at the mixture, I had already pulled mixture a little bit since we don't want to be at our full rich when we're up at this high of an altitude. So it's okay to kind of pre-lean your aircraft. A lot of times it's going to say hold your or mixture full rich. It's okay for you to not. It's kind of beautiful. To not be full rich. All right, so as we look down here at airs, we've got to really kind of keep track of it. You see we're going under 120, so we'll kind of just modulate our rate of climb. We'll bring it right back down to 1,100 here. Is there any more power we can pull? Just a little bit. Look down at our manifold pressure. Bring it right up to a red line. And now it's just a matter of doing a nice, good cross-check. So we're just checking airspeed, heading, vertical speed.
Departure, Baron 624 Delta Whiskey, picking up my IFR clearance to Billings.
Give me 1 second for that clearance.
November 624 Delta Whiskey is cleared to Billings via the NS2 departure, then as filed. Climb and maintain 9,000. Expect 11,010 minutes after departure.
Well, everyone's busy talking over there, which is a real quick check here. Checking our temperatures, our pressures, everything's in the green. Cowl flaps are still open as we are pulling max power in the climb.
612 Papa. Request clearance to Billings via IFR as filed.
Okay, we're getting down towards 40 degrees and we're continuing the climb, so I think this would be a good time right now. Let's get rid of that. Start bringing on our pedostatic, our fuel vent. I'm not going to bring on our windshield heat or our boots, obviously. We don't have any actual signs of any icing right now, so there's no reason to bring those on. But I think it's probably pretty smart to get our pedo heat on as our temperature is just above freezing and will continue to decrease in temperature as we continue the climb. All right, around 120 knots, that's what we're looking for. That's going to be our VY, our best rate of climb. Hopefully we pop out of these clouds at some point. All right, as we just kind of continue up to the climb. So I mentioned I just got back from my check ride last week out in Denver. So I do 2 check rides a year. Technically, it's only one. Let's see if we're going to break out here. It's technically only one check ride. One is called the PC Proficiency Check. That is the check ride. And then another one's called Proficiency Training. It's literally the exact same quote-unquote check ride, but it's supposed to be training, though depending on which examiner you're with, they're very happy to tell you that you can fail the PT too. So, and that is probably, as I mentioned before, I really enjoyed this check ride this time, and that is really a function of your examiner. I'm gonna leave the pitot heat on just as we go through this next batch of clouds. It's my thinking. Just under 120 knots. Let's drop off our speed here just a little bit. Looks like we're clear of terrain as well. So we're not as critical in terms of holding airspeed or rate of climb. So one of the things, as I mentioned, just alluded to real quickly, is that your check ride really can be highly influenced by your check airman. For the most part, the things that we need to check, for instance, during the oral, we have to go over aircraft limitations, our memory items, which are all the emergency procedures that we are required to memorize. Usually some Vol 1 stuff, and that's usually really a lot for the captains. When do you need an alternate? When do you need to do an amended release? Those type of kind of operational stuff you would find that's in our Volume 1. And so they'll ask usually a couple questions there. They will go through a walk around of the
Delta Alpha, contact Helena departure on 119.
of the aircraft, which obviously is not really that tough. Obviously, we do those a lot, or at least the first officers do those now. I don't do them at all. But really, they're looking to ask maybe some questions. So they'll, for instance, one of the questions they asked me, they pointed to the angle of attack indicators, and they said, "Okay, Daryl, are these heated or not?" I'm like, "Yes, they're heated." And they're like, "So how would you heat them?" 13 climbing 4000. Like, "Oh, I turn on the probe heat push button," and then he's like, "All right, so what is not heated?" I'm like, "Oh, and I mentioned one of the gauges that's not heated, right?" So it is our TAT probe, by the way. It's the only thing that's not heated on the ground. So anyway, so they'll kind of ask you a couple questions there, and then, but like I said, it's really up to the discretion of the examiner. And some examiners are there to get the required questions asked, and then they move on. They'll tell you what's kind of happening at the company in terms of some safety issues. But other examiners, they will spend, I think my last examiner, watch, I'm really starting to slow up here because I am not paying attention. So let's drop that right down to where we're starting to level off.
United 215, climb and maintain flight level 330.
Check our airspeed indicator. We are down to 90 knots.
Flight level 330,
So
United
you'll
215.
definitely have to pay attention to that. Better than me.
Salt Lake Center, 132.4, United 215.
All right, so we're leveling off here.
Have a good night.
So, like, as I mentioned before, it really is dependent on the examiner on, like, how smooth these things go. And my last examiner, he was really into systems. Guy's like 85 years old, totally crotchety, makes a point of letting you know what you don't know, will pile drive on a question. Even if you give him the correct answer, he will continue to dig down and dig down and dig down until you don't know the answer. And then when you don't know, it makes you feel like an idiot, kind of treats you like crap. During the check ride, it looks like we're pretty much synced up here, but as we kind of level off here, what I want to do here is we can pull back on our props. Let's bring it back down just to like 25. We'll just bring it past just under red line a little. Right there. Mixture's already probably kind of good, and then we'll come down here and we'll put prop sync on. And so really, it was very unpleasant. And I did make a mistake during the actual flying portion. He threw me for a loop. That was great. I don't mind that fact. But man, he was just chewing me up during the check ride, which of course, it's hard to get really settled. I've already made a mistake. Not enough, obviously, to discontinue the check ride, but I've made a mistake, and now I'm starting to dwell on it. I've had this really weird kind of dynamic where my FO was like a 20-year, actually was picking up just a little bit of icing on the windshield. So let's come back down here. I'm telling you like the worst possible stories here. As I'm just gonna look at the wings here, see if we're picking up anything as I keep getting distracted. So I had an FO who had been a captain but had downgraded because Denver's so senior and he'd rather just be a senior FO than a junior captain. So it's weird, so I'm kind of deferring to him because he's got way more experience than me, but he's technically my FO, so I'm supposed to be leading, and it just was, I mean, obviously I passed, but it was just, I'll be honest with you, it was just unpleasant. It was an unpleasant experience. That examiner is known for being extremely unpleasant, and there are definitely pilots, and I would consider it, who will, if they see him on your schedule, will just simply call out sick for the check ride. And so it was just very unpleasant. This time, the check airman I'd flown
How
with,
is it on my clearance? IFR.
I knew him pretty well. Or I wouldn't say knew him pretty well, but I had flown with him before. Very nice guy.
Cessna 30 Echo.
Asked me some
Approved
questions
for
I didn't
procedure
know.
starting at Bridger.
Didn't treat me like an idiot that I didn't know them. Actually bothered to explain them, explained why he was asking those questions, why he was digging deeper potentially in that subject matter. And then what we ended up doing, which was really kind of fun, was part of the thing we had to do is we had to go offshore. We had a fuel leak. We had to divert. We did that. And then we had to do, he gave us a FCU, like the flight control unit, the main autopilot system in the aircraft. He failed both of them, 1 and 2. And then it knocks out your autopilot, auto thrust, your flight directors, everything that you need to, not to fly the aircraft, but all the automation. And then basically vectors around. I ended up doing like a ILS approach in these kind of conditions in IMC, right down to minimums, 20 knot crosswind, hand flown. Worked out to be a lot of fun, actually. I really, really enjoyed it. And that portion of it is non-jeopardy. So I had actually offered it to my first officer, because as a captain, you get really kind of used to and comfortable flying without the auto thrust and without all that stuff. But a lot of the FOs don't get that opportunity. So I did offer it to the FO, and he declined. He kind of chickened out a little bit, which is fine. I don't mind. I mean, as a captain, you do the hard stuff. So, but I really enjoyed it. I really got a chance to do a lot of hands-on flying, which you don't get to do a lot in the Airbus. And it's because that we've had, honestly, we've had a lot of newer FOs come with not a lot of skills. And so they're really trying to push kind of getting back to basics in terms of flying, making sure that everyone can hand fly the aircraft, hand fly it effectively. I had something maybe a couple months ago. I mentioned it in one of my videos. I'm not sure if on this one or another one, where right after takeoff, I had the auto thrust ECAM as I was actually going down, not even after takeoff, as I was departing. And I made a decision before V1. It was a little bit higher on the airspeed. So I was legally okay to abort. Anything below V1 you can abort for. But I was kind of getting into my comfort zone around 80 knots, where high-speed aborts are pretty dangerous. I'll be honest with you, they can melt. I've done one, maybe 2 low-speed aborts, 30 knots or so.
Still no contact.
Did a full abort, and then ended up cooking the brakes for like an hour and a half. I mean, they were like 550, 600 degrees Celsius. They were just absolutely way too hot to take off. So they had to let them cool down. We didn't have brake fans. It was an older plane. Doesn't matter. Anyways, the faster you're going, you can melt brakes. You can catch on fire. And so I'm like, it's just, auto thrust. I'm gonna deal with it in the air, and I did. It wasn't a big deal, but you kind of get used to that as a captain. But as a first officer, you almost never fly around with auto thrust off. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. If one of my FOs said, "Hey man, I want to practice some auto thrust off landings, no flight director stuff," I just look at him and go, "Yeah, maybe try that with the check airman, not me today." So, anyways, so I got to do a lot of that stuff. I really enjoyed actual flying, a lot of fun. So it just turned out to be a really fun experience. The check ride itself is the exact same check ride. I've been doing this same check ride since 2004. Yeah, I think 2004, once I started flying Part 135 in the helicopters, and they're all the same. You have to do 2 precision approaches, 2 non-precision approach. If it's a multi-engine aircraft, one approach has to be hand flown on a single engine. And so whether it's a helicopter or when I was flying the 145 or the Airbus, it's literally the exact same check ride. And when you do it, the only thing they really change around, we either do it in Denver, we do it in Portland, or it was the third place we do it. Can't remember. We did this one out of Portland. So it's kind of the exact same check ride. It's just kind of how it goes, how nice they're, not nice, I think that's not the right term, just how kind of respectful they are, how encouraging they are. I don't need a lot of pat on the backs, obviously, as I'm flying, but I definitely would appreciate not a guy pile driving and like yelling at me like the last examiner did. I mean, he was like MFing me as we were flying. And look, I made the mistake. I don't mind. And he didn't fail me for the mistake. We just retrained it and moved on. You're allowed to make one mistake in the check ride. The mistake I made on this one was not flying. It was the emergency evacuation. We have to do at least one of those. And so my mistake on this check ride was I didn't get the parking brake set fast enough. I pushed the evacuation button before saying evac. So I pushed the button, the alarm went off, then I said evacuate, evacuate, evacuate. Should have inverted those. And then he didn't like me looking at the checklist when my first officer was reading it. He's like, look, he's reading it, trust him. You just do what he asks you to do, which is, set the parking brake, all the engines off, arm all the fire extinguishers, do the fire extinguishers if needed, call for the evacuation, tell the passengers remain seated, all that kind of stuff. He's like, he will tell you what to do. You don't need to read it and do it. Just trust him that he can do his job. So fair enough. And so we just literally retrained it, came in, landed again, and then called for the emergency evacuation, went through it. So that was the one thing I failed. You can fail one thing on a check ride, and they can quote unquote retrain it. So he opted to retrain me on that. Almost everybody screws up there. Screws up their emergency evacuation because no one actually really does them, right? We do them like once a year, twice a year. So anyways, that's how the check ride went. It went really, really good. And I really, really enjoyed it. My FO was super smart and super locked on. And the check ride examiner was really good. He pushed me hard in terms of getting some questions that he wanted answered. Helped fill in some knowledge gaps that I might have had, and then just did the check ride, knocked it out really quick, and then got the opportunity to do a lot of hand-on flying. We were emphasizing go-around procedures. Once again, we have a lot of newer FOs, and go-arounds are not something we do a whole lot of. I've done multiples, but it can tend to be a word salad, and there's a lot of things happening really quickly as you're going around and calling for going around flaps. And would you call it? Is it a Bach landing? Is it an intermediate? You're already up at 1,000 feet and they're just sequencing you because someone didn't slow up too quickly in front of you and it's too tight and they're not going to get off the runway. There's a whole bunch of different procedures on how to do the go around. So, we covered that. So it was a lot of hand flying stuff. So it was really, quite frankly, just a lot of fun. So anyways, that's probably enough about my life the last week or so. As I mentioned before, heading off to the Dominican Republic for our medical mission next week. I'm going to try to get a video out. If I don't, I apologize. I'm really trying to be a little bit more cognizant of trying to make sure I get content out on a weekly basis. But, we're coming up on the holidays. The stuff just kind of happens. I think, as I mentioned before, the big things for this channel moving forward, if you stuck with me this long, I appreciate it, is going to be, obviously I want to start live streaming and starting with the Airbus. So we're going to cover, there's a lot of things I'd like to cover in the Airbus for everybody. A lot of tips and tricks, everything from how to enter a hold, how to disengage the auto thrust system the correct way, maybe how to do some emergency procedure stuff. We'll talk a little bit, some of those like memory items, maybe perform some of those for you guys so you can see kind of how to do it. Talk about maybe the order of sequence of operations in terms of emergency procedure, memory items, OEBs, ECAM actions, QRH procedures, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I'm looking to do for the live streaming. I'm hoping to get that kind of sorted out. Part of it really, I could probably go right about now, but obviously speaking in front of a camera, in front of people, might be a little bit awkward. I just gotta have to work through it. And then the other thing I've been thinking about doing is doing maybe some X-Plane 12 content. They've had a lot of updates, and graphically where X-Plane used to be a real kind of a joke, especially compared to 2024, which is just, I think, beautiful as we're flying between clouds here. I mean, this is really just nice. Sunrise, right? I think this looks really, really nice. But they've made a lot of improvements apparently to X-Plane, so I'm thinking about checking that out, because the one thing about X-Plane they talk about is that it's a really better flight model. So they might think about adding that to the channel. I've got a couple ideas on that. So anyways, I think we were told to, as I zoom out here, that they were eventually going to kind of radar vector us, but they really never did. So what I think I'm going to do is we're just going to make a slight turn to the right. We're going to come down here to the autopilot system, and hit nav. And this should kind of get us on course to GOGS. Anyway, so we've got about 166 ground speed. Let's come over to our flight plan. Still got another 153 miles or so we still have another hour. So let me just kick you out here once again. If you stayed for all the shenanigans with my check ride, I appreciate y'all. And I will hopefully Beyond ATC works. If it doesn't, for whatever reason, we are going to be proceeding directly to GOGS right there, and then we're just going to pick up the ILS and fly the ILS in, regardless of whatever shenanigans Say Intentions gives us. All right, so that's the plan, and I will see you all here for you just a couple seconds, and for me, around about 40 minutes or so. So, all right, thank you very much, and I will see you in a few seconds. All right, everybody, just checking back in with you. We've been instructed to maintain 9,000 and heading of 315. So let's go 315. Let's go heading. Coming up over the lake just as we planned. So let's go pull this out. Let's go vertical speed. 1,000. That should be good. And engage. So as it turns out, you see I'm doing around 220 knots. I had overleaned the mixture as I was busy yippity-yapping about my check ride. So I just pushed up the mixture a little bit. I was we were getting right around 16 or so just before I pulled power here, and we were around like 10 or 11 or so on the fuel flow. So right around 16 seems to be like the sweet spot there for level flight. Okay, since we've been cleared for the approach and we are now off our airway.
Baron 8 Delta Delta, contact Salt Lake approach on 127.075.
127.075 for 8 Delta Delta. Good morning, Baron 058 Delta Delta, checking in with you, 13,000 for 9,000.
Baron 058 Delta Delta, Salt Lake approach. Good morning, Glacier altimeter 29901.
99901 for 8 Delta Delta. What I was mentioning is here, let's come back over to here, and what we can do is we'll go back, procedure, and we low approach and activate. And what that's going to do for us is, what it should do for us is, let's come back here to our map mode. We want to be on VLOC, and we want to be in, so we come over here. We want to be on nav. We want to get out of the GPS mode, since we're no longer going to follow that. So we got VLOC, just hit that CDI button. And now we are 12,000.
2331 Salt Lake Center, radar contact, climb via the SID.
Climb via the SID, Alaska 2331.
Alaska 2331, good morning.
All right, let's bring up our EFB here, and we can see we need a localizer frequency of 111.5. We have that set, and a final approach course of 020. Let's just make a slight adjustment. I think I had that on 0. Right there, 020 on our CDI. Hot Drew will be our glide slope for our final approach fix at 5,800. And our minimums will be 3166, which is a 200-foot RA. Missed approach, climb to 4,100 feet, then climbing left turn to 12,000 on a heading of 190 and outbound the FCA VOR on a 238 radial to Kili, and hold, continue to climb and hold up to 12,000. You see the MSA, we got MSA all over the place, 9,600 to the south,
Delta Delta,
east.
proceed direct JOLEC, descend and maintain 7300 until established on the localizer, cleared for the ILS runway 2 approach.
Direct to JOLEG and maintain 7,000 till established on the ILS, on the localizer, and clear for the ILS 2 approach for 8 Delta Delta. All right, 8,100 feet to the southwest 11.4. You see all those up there. Let's not get too bent around the axle on this one here. Highest obstacle will be 74.37. That'll be about 5.6 to the east, northeast of the airport. Shouldn't be a factor for us as we're coming into the southeast. Jolek at 7,300. Hot Drew 5,800. And once we get down there, we should see Pappy's on the left with the Mauser lighting system. We've already covered the Mr. Post procedure, and we need half mile visibility, 200-foot overcast, kind of standard approach. All right, so let's see, where are we exactly? All right. 10,000 minus 9. I'm not going to drop down to 7,000 quite yet. We need to get a little bit closer to Jolek. I can either go zoom in right here. Let's see, oops, in. Looks like they're cutting me just inside. So I could just nav to it, or I can just kind of cut a little bit outside of Jolek there. All right, so I think we're briefed up and ready to go. Coming up over the highest obstacle, 7,000 feet, so we should probably be okay to continue down. I'll probably bring us down another, let's go for 8,000, leveled out, engage, keep on making our way down. That's right at 7,000 right there, so I don't want to get too close. Just on the outside of Jolek. All right, that looks good. I think we are pretty much set up for the approach. And I'm just going to continue us down to 7,000 here, slowly. What we really want to do is as we're trying to plan this, we want to stay underneath our glide slope here. So you see we have a full dot deflection coming up on 8,000. Let's see if we are coming back up on the chart yet. All right, so we should be just kind of abeam the highest area and that tower right there. So we should be good to continue down to 7,000. So I don't need to rush down as long as I'm underneath the glide slope, which I am. So what we can do now, though, is let's set up our autopilot. We'll come down here, and we're going to want to activate the approach. And as I get in a little closer, I'll probably just adjust the heading slightly, just to make the intercept angle a little bit less. We're almost coming up on 90 degrees. If we do that, we should avoid a lot of the, hopefully, if we do it correctly, a lot of the snaking back and forth. All right, so 8,000 descending 7. I'm just going to start slowing ourselves up a little bit. I'd like to get my first notch of flaps in. This is a kind of an Airbus habit here, as you've heard me say it a million times, and I will continue to say it, especially in airline. You can either go down or you can slow down, but you're definitely not going to do both. All right, so we're about a mile out. Let's just start pulling out some power. And I'm just going to make a slight.
Delta Delta, contact Glacier Tower on 124.55.
124.55 for 8 Delta Delta. tower. Baron 058 Delta Delta, just outside Joe Leck.
Baron 8 Delta Delta, roger. Contact Glacier Tower on 124.55.
124.55. Ah, did it again. And Glacier Tower 058 Delta Delta, checking in with you just inside Joe Leck.
Baron 058 Delta Delta, Glacier Tower, roger. Rook 058 Delta Delta. Continue approach runway 2.
Continue the approach for runway 28 Delta Delta. All right, so we just dropped in our first notch of flaps. We still got ways to go, so I don't want to slow up too much. I just want to be able to get our gear down in that second notch of flaps whenever we can. We can see up here, flight directors are on, autopilot's on, approach coupled and glide slope. Check our VSI as we kind of approach the intercept point, and you can see it's descending on its own, and we're maintaining the glide slope. So we picked up the glide slope. That looks good. We are on the localizer. Bring up our chart just to have some idea where we're at. But this should be a nice, easy approach at this point. At this point, since we are on glide slope, what we want to do is dial in our missed approach altitude, which will be 12,000 feet.
Roger, good day. Roger, right turn here at Delta, then ground 121.60 Delta Hotel.
Coming into land, let's look down here. Let's put our landing light, taxi lights on. Slight adjustment there. I'll bring in a little bit more mixture. Okay, coming up over Hot True now at 57.50. All right. Looking good. I don't think we need this chart up here anymore.
Station Air 24 Delta, welcome to Glacier. Exit at Delta if able. Contact ground on 121.6.
All right, so right hand turn off.
Order ground on 121.624 Delta.
Baron 8 Delta Delta, winds 360 at 21, gusting 29er. Runway 2 cleared to land.
Runway 2, clear land, 8 Delta Delta. All right, let's drop gear and our second notch of flaps, and let's start slowing up for around 100 knots. What we say minimums are going to be 3,166. All right. Typical ILS, 500-600 feet per minute rate of descent. That is typical. Gradually slowing up here to around 90 knots. Don't want anything slower. Kind of hold 95 here. All right, temperature still showing almost 60 degrees, so we do not need. I will leave them on though, so we don't need our anti-ice. I was running the windshield heat, fuel vent, everything other than the boots as we're going in and out of clouds. All right, I think I've got the lighting system straight ahead. So the rule would be once you get down to minimums, so 200 feet above ground level, you need to have the runway environment in sight, which would be the lighting system, the PAPI, the runway end lights. If you have any of those things, you can continue down another 100 feet At that point, you have to have the airport in sight, or the landing runway in sight. So the very first thing you're going to want to pick up here is going to be the runway light system. We've picked that up already. Just pulling out a little bit of power. Look at our pappies. We've got white over red. That is perfect. Now, you will often see on a chart that the glide slope and the lighting system, or the pappies, are
November 18 Romeo, contact departure.
Are not coincident or
4 Delta
coincident.
Whiskey, you're leaving my airspace. Frequency change approved.
So do not be surprised on sometimes if you come in that you get a slightly low on the pappies. That's kind of like a standard thing. You see that a lot. At least in the real world. But if you are in instrument conditions, you're going to stay on the glide slope. If you're making a visual approach, then you'll stay on the pappies. All right. Glacier Park, Montana. Nice and flat. All right, so airspeed under 95 knots or so. Let's come down here. Actually, we want to prop sync off.
Glacier Tower, Skyhawk 5332 Victor is ready for IFR departure at runway 02. I have information, Mike.
All right, just knocked off the autopilot. And as you can see here, I need to make just really, aircraft's already trimmed out.
Have clearance from center.
Pull out power just a little bit more.
Contact departure on 123.9 or 5.
All right, right at minimums. Get back on center line. Let's cut power.
We have touchdown. Taxi to parking and shut down.
Fahrenheit Delta Delta, welcome to Glacier. Contact ground on 121.6.
21.6 for 8 Delta Delta. All right, everybody, that was a nice, successful flight using some live weather. Nice ILS approach. I think I would like to do as I mentioned, an RNAV approach for us all. Maybe just plan it out a little bit more. Just kind of look at it. We got taxiway lights everywhere. That's always fun. Let's go ahead and bring up our flaps. Swap over. And ground 0858 Delta Delta, taxi to parking.
Baron 8 Delta Delta, taxi to park span 23 via Bravo 4, Bravo, hold short of runway 30, then Bravo 3. Have a good day.
Good day, 8 Delta Delta. All right, folks. I enjoyed doing this flight for y'all. As I mentioned before, I think I'd like to do a localizer approach. I'd like to hit all the major approaches here with this aircraft so we understand how to do them all. If you have questions or if there's anything you would like to see in particular, maybe we should cover like maybe a go-around or something like that. Maybe we can do that. Other than that, once again, I appreciate all the support the channel's been receiving. I really appreciate you all. And as we move forward, as I talked a little bit about earlier, into live streaming and maybe picking up X-Plane, I'm looking forward to all the content that hopefully we can develop. And as always, this is a community-driven channel. At least I like it to be. So please hop on, join the Discord. If you have questions, definitely ask me. And once again,
Transport from dispatch. Someone is coming to take the cargo.
I will catch you all in the next one. Take care for now. Bye.